So the Barrie Colts are getting ready to welcome the Flint Firebirds Thursday night at the Sadlin Arena, the one and only visit for Flint. And today we're joined by Brian Gardner, the voice of the Flint Firebirds. Brian, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
And you've been with the team for 2 years now, so this is your second season. But this is also a pretty big year for Flint. They're celebrating their 10th anniversary in the Ontario Hockey League. It must be a pretty exciting season for the fans and the organization.
Yeah, it is. The organization's kind of doing a lot of kind of community fundraising type initiatives as a focus for the 10th year, kind of trying to give back to the community that is, supported over, this being the 10th year now of the Firebirds in Flint in the OHL. And it's been good because it's something that you see, as you mentioned, I just came in. This is just my second season with the team, but you kind of see that it's an upward trajectory in terms of the success of the franchise on and off the ice, and that there's kind of a you see the fan base growing, and there are the averages of fans per game have risen every year. And so it's kind of a cool way that the team is really giving back to an area that's embraced them and allowed them to have enough success to stick around for 10 years.
And I know for a lot of junior hockey fans, when we found out Flint was joining the circuit, there was a lot of questions because many weren't familiar with Flint. But really, when you look back, the city of Flint has a real deep hockey history, and it even correlates with what's going on in Saginaw too.
Yeah, it does. I mean, and I think the biggest piece of the hockey history is the Flint Generals, and it kind of goes back to the old, IHL days even, and it's something you hear a lot about, and it's something that the team likes to honor that tradition of the Generals. And there were other teams involved. There were different iterations of the Generals. There's the Michigan Warriors NAHL team that was here briefly, and yeah, I mean, it's a hockey city. It's a hockey city kind of through and through, and it's one of those places that I should always have a team, and it's got rectified when it didn't have a team for a little while, and then the Firebirds come in with the relocation from Plymouth. So I think that hopefully, kind of especially the Canadian-based, Ontario-based fans of the OHL have kind of come to learn a little bit more about Flint and its place really in hockey history. Because of course you go back to, of course, the Generals being a pro team, but it's really anytime you come to a game here, I think definitely from the atmosphere and kind of the vibe when you enter the arena, it just feels right.
And for the fan base, I'm sure they're pretty passionate. So coming into this season, wanting to see this team take those next steps, and we saw before the season started quite a few moves with Thibodeau coming from Kingston, the trade with the Sudbury Wolves. So with the way that all came about, this team right now, are they still trying to figure out the chemistry and get things back on track? Because it's been a bit of a slow start for you guys.
Yeah, it's been a slow start. I would say that it's, I don't know if it's the chemistry or the style or just things to click or what, but because you see it in flashes. Like at times you see this as a team that is just like, whoa, that they are really, really good. And sometimes it's even from a period to period basis where they'll come out slow, but then start to figure it out towards the end of a period. And then suddenly they're really ramping it up. And then sometimes that maybe they have a great game and you expect, okay, it's just going to carry through to the next game. But then they go out the next game and it's almost looks like a different team. And so I think that's maybe kind of what's been a little bit frustrating for the coaching staff and for the fan base at times, because as you mentioned, yeah, it's a team that made a bunch of moves in the offseason and it started to position itself as a contender. And early on, we're not, we're about a third of the way through at this point. And you look at the roster and it's a sub 500 roster, seventh place in the Western Conference, and not exactly what you would have hoped for to this point. But people who watch the team on a day in and day out basis know kind of what it's capable of. And I think that which can almost make it a little more frustrating because you see it in flashes and you're like, why not just more of that? But that being said, it does kind of feel like that if everything can click with, be it the right kind of combos with the coaching staff's message and just kind of being able to fully get the buy-in, and or if it's just chemistry like you mentioned, that it does feel like there's a run that is more than possible that this team could go on at some point mid-season and start to have the record look a little bit more like maybe what we would have expected going into the year.
And right now, Flint coming off back-to-back wins against Sarnia and Niagara, and that win in Niagara, pretty impressive, putting up 8 against an Ice Dogs team that right now near the top of the Eastern Conference. So, it goes to show that this team has the talent, and they could, make some noise in the West.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm talking about when I say about what it's capable of, because that game on Friday was probably the first time that, you finish up a game and you see, all right, well, that was a start to finish dominant performance. It was, it was just a outclassing of the other team. And Niagara is a good hockey team, as you all know. Obviously, they had a really hot start and they've kind of leveled off a little bit, but there's some players over on that side with a Kevin He and a Robrick, and they just kind of didn't quite look like threats for that entire game. And so that's the thing, and the reason why I say with a certain amount of confidence that it feels like there is some sort of a run that this team has in them to kind of find themselves maybe taking a chunk out of the Western Conference standings and you're in the top half and starting to look like a contender, just because you look up and down the roster and the horses that the team has. And then you look at when they play their game and it's buzzing and really every single line is going out there and providing something, then you know that it can be a scary team and a team that can come in and, especially at this stage of the year, surprise maybe the Eastern Conference team that they're playing or fans that they're playing when they look at the losing record and think, oh, it's Flint's coming in, they're having kind of a meh year, and then
Yeah.
you watch them play and say, well, that's not the case.
And one player that's kind of stood out for me on the roster is Matthew Wang. He's been having some good games as well. He played great there against the Niagara Ice Dogs. Talk a bit about his game.
So yeah, Wang's an interesting guy because last season was his first in the OHL and he was drafted in the 2021 OHL draft. So he'd been, a Firebirds prospect for a couple of years and eventually, makes the team, signs his contract, and there he is last year. And he was bottom six guy, kind of an energy guy. He would show some stuff every once in a while, but, wasn't a big points contributor in his first go around in the OHL. But it seems like now, especially because he's maybe older than most second year players you'd expect. And you're kind of seeing a little bit more out of him in terms of goal scoring touch. And he really embraced his role. Like there was a certain point last year, later in the year, when you started to see out of Matthew Wang, like, okay, well, he seems like he embraced his bottom six and he's going to go out there and make the absolute most out of every shift. And he does that. And he's been done that from the start this year, but you're also seeing him get a little bit more burn. I mean, right now there's a third line that is kind of a rotating right wing, but it's some combination of Wang and Hayden Reed on the third line with there's been Jeremy Martin, Cole Zarowski, Carlos Flugans all on the right wing at times with them and just kind of jumbling things up. And that line will go out there and it's just a bit of a buzzsaw because it's going to go and just tirelessly on the forecheck, just make you work. And they understand that, all right, I'm not getting top 6 minutes, but when I go, I'm getting enough to play regularly and also to go out there and just not leave anything in the tank at the end of any given shift. And it's kind of fun, when I see them climb over the boards and that it's going to be a lot of pace when this team is out, when that line is out there for their shift. And Wang's a big part of it. I mean, he's been putting the puck in the net, and also at times when he gets some other opportunities, like Connor Clattenburg was out with an upper body injury for a little while, and suddenly you're seeing Wang out there as a net front presence on the power play, something that would not have been even under consideration last season. So he's a guy I like watching play, and it's starting to kind of click a little bit more on the score sheet and getting a few more eyes on him. So it's been fun to watch.
And of course, Thibodeau, who the Firebirds acquired from the Kingston Frontenacs during the offseason, he's now leading the team in scoring. Talk a bit about his game, because I know a lot of fans in Kingston familiar with his game, but for the rest of the league, I think we're starting to wake up to what he's capable of.
Speed and creativity are the two things that he has that really kind of separate him from the pack. I mean, Chris Thibodeau, yeah, as you mentioned, they're Eastern Conference fans and fans of the Kingston Frontenacs who know what he's capable of, but seems like here in Flint, he has been put in positions at times where to just be the playmaker out there. And he's missed the last handful of games with an upper body injury, which has hurt a little bit, but at the same time, he has been like you see him out there at times and he'll make a pass that you didn't even really see. And sudden, but he knew exactly where his teammate was, just a no look creative pass that was able to set them up for a little tap into the back door. I mean, there's one play that I really kind of typifies Chris Thibodeau's season to me, where he was able to kind of poke the puck free in his own zone, flip it past the defender to a point where he can just outskate everybody to it. It was just the knowledge of I am the fastest player on the ice right now, and just the quick thought to be able to do that ends up feeding the trailing Carlos Flugans for a tap in on a 2-on-1 for his first OHL goal. And it was just, okay, this is just kind of what he brings. And you see why they traded a bunch of draft picks to go and get him from Kingston. And yeah, he's a fun player to watch. It's definitely just anytime he gets the puck with open ice in front of him, it's electric because he's so quick. And when he gets away from kind of the corners where, because he's not the biggest guy, where maybe they try to play him a little bit more physical, but when he gets into open ice, especially when he has an odd man rush with him, something fun's going to happen.
And for being in Michigan, you guys are in an interesting spot because it's just you and the Saginaw Spirit. And we've now been hearing, some rumblings about potential expansion. There's been talk about the Muskegon Lumberjacks to the USHL. Maybe he's making the switch to the OHL. I know it's all just speculation, but for you guys being in Central Michigan, how big would it be to have another team in the state?
It'd be massive. And yeah, as you mentioned, this is all speculative. Like I don't have any sort of inside information that knows that this would or would not happen, but I'll tell you, I'm rooting for it because it's another team in the States, which, another one that you can travel to just by going west across the state and getting over to Muskegon would be very easy travel for the Firebirds, for the Saginaw Spirit. It puts in another natural rival as one of the American teams in the Ontario Hockey League. So obviously you have the division rivals and just familiarity that breeds contempt, but it's a lot easier of a sell to the fan base where it's like, oh yeah, we're playing Muskegon. Well, yeah, they're from the other part of Michigan. We don't like them because we're from this part of Michigan. You know how it
Yeah.
goes. So yeah, I mean, I think it'd be fantastic. And I think that it's obviously such an interesting time in junior hockey with the changing landscape with the NCAA eligibility rules and how that's affecting the USHL and other American-based junior leagues. And then the BCHL, of course, is taking a big hit, and what it's going to mean for players who are able to go between the CHL leagues like the OHL and NCAA hockey. And yeah, it's really, I mean, your guess is as good as mine as to how things shake out. But if looking simply at the notion of the Muskegon Lumberjacks becoming an OHL franchise, sign me up.
And for you guys are in such a unique spot because you guys are crossing the border, what, every week?
Pretty much. I mean, the only time we don't cross the border typically is when we play Saginaw, because Saginaw is only about a 40-minute ride up Interstate 75. And so there's 4 road games in Saginaw, 4 against us. But then, yeah, I mean, even some of our other commuter trips like Sarnia, we cross at the Port Huron to Sarnia crossing the Blue Water Bridge. And then even Windsor, you go down through Detroit and you cross at the Detroit Windsor Tunnel. And the only other time that we wouldn't be crossing is if we're going to Erie and not coming from somewhere in Ontario. So, like, for instance, we were just about to, before the game was postponed due to that just absolute dumping of lake effect snow that
Yeah.
we got over this past weekend. We were going to be going from St. Catharines in Niagara to Erie. We would have crossed around Buffalo. And then after that, we would have come home just staying in the States, going kind of south of Lake Erie through Ohio and eventually back up through Michigan. So that's the other time if we're going to go directly to Erie or come directly from Erie that there's no border crossing. But yeah, I mean, if you travel with the Flint Firebirds, either as a staff member or as a player, you become very familiar with especially the kind of Port Huron and Sarnia border crossing.
Well, it's such a unique experience for you and for also the broadcasters at Erie and Saginaw. So, Brian, I thank you very much for doing this, and I guess we'll see you at the rink in a couple days.
Yeah, sounds good. Looking forward to it.
So that's Brian Gardner, the play-by-play voice of the Flint Firebirds, and yeah, it is such a unique spot for the OHL circuit. The teams that have to cross the border on a regular basis, and also to note for their schedule, they have to travel to Ottawa on Super Bowl weekend. So it's kind of tough when you got to go all the way to Ottawa for a 2 o'clock game and then watch the Super Bowl on the bus. But that's a part of the game. You play the games you're scheduled, and we just appreciate Brian coming on here to talk about the Firebirds and talking about potentially a team moving into Muskegon as an expansion franchise. It's all speculation at this point. Nothing's been confirmed, but it is kind of fun to talk about and what kind of impacts it could have on the OHL going forward. So again, thank you very much for your support. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Talk to you again soon.